Hey everybody. Alright, so I just want to take a few minutes today and talk about some different habitat management techniques that just don't have the same relevance here in the north as they do in the Midwest and South, because so often what happens in habitat management is guys fall in love with one technique or one strategy and they think that applies everywhere. That is not the case. We always have to consider regional differences when we're working to build up and improve the habitat on our properties. I mean, I love different timber management techniques up here that I talk about often on my videos, but I know in the Midwest and South they do not have the same relevance. I mean, they just have more options down in the South. But I'm going to go through 5 different habitat management techniques today and talk about the why behind why they don't necessarily work that well up here in the north. So the first habitat management technique that just doesn't have a whole lot of relevancy up here in the north is hack and squirt or girdle and spray. So basically, with hack and squirt or girdle and spray, you are hacking into the tree or girdling the tree and then spraying herbicide into that tree so that you can kill that tree while it's still standing. This is a common forest stand improvement technique that's used in the Midwest and South, where they have a longer growing season. So when they kill that tree standing, they have many months for that forest to regenerate. Now, if we were to use hack and squirt or girdle and spray up here in the north and kill that tree standing, we would get a response from the forest floor by letting sunlight in, because anytime you let sunlight in to the forest floor, you are going to release that seed bank and you will get some growth. That is a big objective of ours, even up here in the north, is just getting sunlight to the forest floor. The thing is, when we're leaving that tree dead standing, we are wasting a resource for a few different reasons. Instead of leaving that tree standing and by cutting it down, either via hinge cutting or traditional flush cutting, we are now getting structure down to the forest floor. Up here in the north, that is crucial because we have a shorter growing season, so just by killing that tree standing, it may take years before we'll actually have viable cover on the forest floor. But if we flush cut that tree or hinge cut that tree, we will have instant cover on the forest floor. Another huge reason why I want to cut that tree down up here is because woody resources are absolutely crucial to a deer survival up here in the north in the winter. I mean, that is what deer survive on up here in the north in the winter. I'm shooting this video in April and we still have 2 to 3 feet of snow on the ground, and we are starting to get to that point where we are having deer dying. If I were to go through here and kill these trees standing, I am leaving a very valuable woody resource up in the canopy out of the deer's reach. But if I come through here and I start knocking trees down, deer can have these crucial food resources when they need them the most. Another reason why I like to get those treetops down to the forest floor is because those treetops can act like natural seclusion cages to protect some of that woody regeneration from deer browse. Because if you're in an area like mine where the deer yard on us, they absolutely crush all the woody regeneration every winter. They basically act like a forestry mulcher and come through and smoke all those new sprouts and shoots that are coming up. So by having some treetops on the ground, I can actually get some woody regeneration to get past the deer browse line and create viable cover, and also maybe even regenerate a few oak trees so I can have some hardwoods regeneration, because in the open areas, the deer are definitely going to smoke the oaks first. So I am not able to grow oak trees unless they are protected. So it is nice to have those treetops to act like that seclusion cage. This area I'm pointing at was logged a few years ago, and you can see just by letting sunlight in doesn't mean that we have viable cover, because
the deer have just crushed the regeneration in that area. So that's why I've come through in this area, and I have hinged cut and flush cut some trees so I can actually have some woody structure for the deer, and also with the hinge trees have additional food for the deer, so they can browse on those treetops. Now, if you're not comfortable running a chainsaw, yes, you can use Hack and Squirt or Gortle and Spray in the north, and you will get some benefit from it. But if you are competent in using a saw is definitely the way to go. The only time I would use Hack and Squirt or Gortle and Spray is if there is a tree I'm just not comfortable felling and I need to kill it. Or there are occasions where I might use it with like treating invasive species. But when it comes to the majority of the timber management work I do, I definitely favor my chainsaw because I understand just how valuable the woody resources are for the deer, especially in the winter. So I'd much rather be going through right now and cutting trees down so the deer have something to browse on, rather than coming through and killing them standing and leaving that valuable resource up in the canopy. Now, the second habitat management technique that I just would not use a whole lot up here in the north is prescribed fire in the timber. And I do have some reasons for that. Now, prescribed fire in the Midwest and South is an absolutely fantastic tool to utilize in the timber. A properly prepared for and done prescribed fire in the Midwest and South will help to release that native seed bed and can provide a diverse blend of herbaceous plants, grasses, and some woody species in response to that fire. So fire is a fantastic tool down there in the Midwest and in the South. But up here in the North, as I've mentioned earlier, woody browse is king. Fire does a really good job of releasing the herbaceous plants and the grasses that have been sitting dormant in the seedbed in the timber. But up here in the north, herbaceous plants and grasses just do not have a whole lot of staying power when it comes to how long they last or how long they actually have a wildlife benefit. Now, I still want to have some herbaceous growth on our farm because it does provide good fawning and brood rearing cover, and it is food for deer in the summer. But I do not want that growth in the timber. In the timber, I am going to favor woody regeneration 10 times out of 10 because we know how crucial that woody resource is to the deer in the winter, and we also need cover that will actually stand because those herbaceous plants will break down quickly in the fall up here and provide no food and no cover. Another thing about trying to implement prescribed fire up here in the north is that we just have a very, very narrow burn window. You can see I'm walking around today. It's April. We still have 2 to 3 feet of snow on the ground. So that snow is going to take a while to melt. So as it melts, it's going to keep that forest floor wet, and eventually it will melt, but by then the leaves will probably already be starting to leaf out, and the forest will canopy over, and it's going to be tough to run a fire through here because, once we get into mid to late May, early June, the humidity starts to rise, and it's going to really be tough to get a fire to actually carry through the timber up here. Whereas in the south, they actually have an extended burn window where they can burn in the timber. It's tough to hit that window right, and there can be years where you just will not get an opportunity to actually do a burn in the timber if that's what you desire to do. If I am able to hit the burn window right, I do plan to do a burn in the timber on one portion of our farm this year because I want to be able to compare and contrast that woodlot that I've burned to these other woodlots where I do my forest stand improvement with a chainsaw. One final note, if you are deciding to burn in the timber up here in the north, I would follow the Dr. Craig Harper method of burning, where if you're burning for bedding and woody regeneration, he advises that you burn on a 7-year rotation as compared to like a 2 to 3 year rotation that they do in the Midwest and South. If you burn on a 2 to 3 year rotation, you will eventually turn that understory into a predominantly herbaceous and grassy habitat state, which, just like I said, does not have a whole lot of benefit up here in the north when it comes to the fall and winter. So if you do decide to burn, look at doing a 7-year rotation so you can allow some woody response to get some woody browse and woody structure in place for the deer and other wildlife. All right, habitat management technique number 3 to avoid is making the wrong food plot forages the staple of your food plotting program. So right here, I am looking at a clover plot. It's April, and clearly this clover plot is not doing much for deer. Now, does that mean I'm not going to plant clover on our farm? Well, of course not, because I'm shooting this video and I'm looking at a clover plot. I do plant clover for many reasons. It is really, really good early season attraction. It tends to have deer on it the first 3 to 4 weeks of our bow season. Normally by mid to late October, they tend to be off the clover as the frost starts to break it down. But I really like clover because it is a great soil builder. It fixates nitrogen. It can provide organic matter to the soil. The annual clovers have a taproot that can break up the hardpan. So there's a lot of great soil building properties to clover. So every plot eventually on our farm gets clover just to build up the soil. But with that said, clover just never will be the staple or gold standard of our food plotting program. That just does not have the staying power that other forages up here have. You know, once it starts to break down with the frost and the snow covers it, the deer are just off clover. The 3 main staples in our food plotting program are going to be brassicas, which we plant a variety of different brassicas. You know, that's just a general term. But brassicas, beans, and corn. And we do beans and corn because we have the acres for it. Not everybody has the acres to be able to plant beans and corn. But those are the 3 that we plant because they're the ones that have the most benefit throughout the deer season. As a bonus, I'll go into most of our plots and I'll overseed cereal rye. Cereal rye is great because it is highly cold tolerant. It'll stay green into November, so it has some benefit into November. And it is the first thing to germinate in the spring. So we're actually providing forage in the spring when the deer need it the most. As soon as the snow melts off, the cereal rye is going to start to pop and it's going to be there waiting for the deer. So the moral of the story is with our food plots, I want to be focusing on forages that are going to help deer when they need it the most. So clovers, oats, alfalfa, things like that are great forages, and you can definitely plant them up here. But just know that, you know, once the frost hits, that they're going to be neutralized to some degree and not be a whole lot of benefit to the deer. So as you're planting some of those, make sure that you also have plenty of these other forages that are going to last into November, December, and beyond, so that you're helping the deer out as they're going into that stress period of winter.
All right, here is a huge no-no when it comes to habitat management in the north, and that is killing the wrong trees. So for those that are utilizing Girdle and Spray or Hack and Squirt, if they're using it, they should be using it appropriately and not killing the wrong trees. You can see here, I'm in an aspen stand. This was cut a few summers ago, and it is loaded with cover and forage for deer. Aspen may be the best habitat tree we have for deer in the north, let alone a phenomenal tree for ruffed grouse as well. I mean, look at it, it's just loaded. There's just thousands and thousands of stems in here. Even when the leader grows outside of the deer's reach, there's still plenty of browse down here with all the different branches that are coming off the main trunk. So if you have a wildlife manager or habitat manager that is telling you to kill your aspen, run for the hills. I've heard it 3 different times with a guy from the Midwest who comes up here and he's telling guys to kill their aspen. That is terrible, terrible advice. I mean, that's downright criminal. Because not only are aspen a phenomenal wildlife tree up here, they also have timber value, like a lot of timber value. I was on a property where the logger got 30 cords to the acre. 30 cords to the acre of aspen at $30 a cord. That's a ton of money. And aspen regenerate and can be logged again at the 30 to 40 year mark. So you might be able to get 2 cuttings of aspen in your lifetime. So there is a huge market for aspen up here, and they have huge wildlife value. So if somebody is telling you to kill your aspen, you should fire that person on the spot. They are just such a great tree to have up here. So do be careful if you are using Hack and Squirt or Girdle and Spray. Know what you're killing. I mean, there's other trees that they're recommending to kill, like box elders, ash, elm. Like these are basswood. These are all great wildlife trees when we cut them down and let them regenerate and get those stump sprouts coming that are super nutrient dense. Or for utilizing a few hinge cuts and hinging them over, they hinge really well. So just because a tree does not have timber value doesn't mean that it doesn't have phenomenal wildlife value. So be careful. If you are killing trees, be careful about what you're killing. If somebody's telling you to kill everything but the oaks and create an oak savanna up here, that's just not great. That's terrible advice. Because oak trees, I love oak trees, they provide a food source for maybe a month or 2 in areas like ours. You know, the acorns drop and they've pretty much cleaned up the bur oak acorns by mid-October. They'll get on the red oak acorns a little bit later in the winter because they're just more acidic, and it takes a while for them to want to hit the red oak acorns. But it's a very limited food source because we have a bumper crop maybe every 2 to 3 years. So you're favoring a food source that provides you food for a month or 2 every 2 to 3 years over something like this, which is food and cover year round. If somebody's telling you to kill aspen in favor of your oaks, run for the hills. Awful advice. There is not a single forester, wildlife biologist, wildlife manager, DNR personnel, anybody that knows anything about deer management in the north that would tell you to treat and kill your aspen. We all know how crucial it is. So if you're taking advice from a guy, look where they're from. And if they're giving you advice that works in the Midwest or South, but it does not work up here, run for the hills. I think of one group in the Midwest, Land and Legacy. They've taken the time to understand it and get it. They've had some great podcasts talking about northern deer management. Now these guys are from Missouri, so obviously that's where they cut their teeth, was in, you know, the Ozarks and understanding that area. But they've taken the time to learn northern deer management, and I would 100% trust them to manage a property in the north, because they did not take what works in the Ozarks and apply it up here. They actually wanted to understand and learn what northern deer management is like, and through experience working up here, they've been able to understand that it's different and that we just need different habitat management techniques up here. So if you're killing trees, don't kill your aspen, don't kill your box elder, don't kill your basswood. These are all great wildlife trees, but especially the aspen. Do not kill your aspen. All right, so the last habitat management technique that we should not utilize up here in the north is cutting your conifers. I do not see a lot of guys do this. Most guys understand the importance of thermal cover and that these are an important tree to have on the landscape up here. But down in the south and in the Midwest, they cut a lot of their red cedars to try restore that native landscape, because the red cedars are growing where they're not supposed to be growing. Even though they're a native tree, they're in spots they shouldn't be. So guys will cut the red cedars as a forest stand improvement technique in order to favor that native habitat. Well, here in the north, if you have red cedars, you want to keep your red cedars because thermal cover is crucial. Now, I don't have any red cedars on our property, but if I did, I'd keep them because thermal cover is so vital in the winter up here. So do not cut your red cedars or your spruce or your pine. I mean, unless your pine are growing way up and you're going to do a timber harvest, well, then obviously you can start cutting your pine. But if these trees are providing thermal cover, you want to keep them because we need thermal cover up here. If you have a dense stand like this one, obviously you can do things like thinnings and stuff like that just to improve the overall health of the stand. Maybe have pockets where you get some sunlight coming in so you can get some woody regeneration. But even a dense stand of conifers up here has its place, because for the last few months in this dense stand of conifers, the deer have absolutely piled in to get into that thermal cover and get out of the winter elements. So we need dense stands of conifers. We need stands of conifers where there's a lot of woody regen coming. We use conifers for screening, things like that. But they have their place up here, whereas in the Midwest or South, they don't have as many benefits. And as a side note, if you are a northern deer manager and you see guys in the South or the Midwest cutting their cedars, don't jump all over them and say, hey, why are you cutting your cedars? That's phenomenal bedding. Or like, deer bedding my cedars all the time. Why are you cutting your cedars? It's a different beast in the South. You know, it's a different beast in the North. So take the time to realize that regional differences are at play and that they manage their timber differently than we do up here. All right. Well, hopefully that sun keeps beating down and this snow melts off. I'm really hopeful I'm going to be seeing a lot of brown in the next 4 or 5 days. 60-degree temps coming from, I mean, it was just in the 20s here 2 days ago. So going to be crazy that winter's going to finally be over. It's been a long winter. All right, you all take care. God bless.